Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. It really helps out the channel and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the story. Today, I've got an emotional journey for you. This story is about love, guilt, and the difficult choices we make, ones that can haunt us forever. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. The beginning. Mia had always been the kind of woman who believed that life's most important treasures were her family and the quiet stability they shared. Growing up in the small town of Ridgewood, Virginia, her days were spent in simple joy and her world was a carefully maintained balance of peace and love. But life, as it often does, had other plans. When her mother passed away suddenly, Mia's world was shattered. She had always thought of her mother as the backbone of her existence. Without her, everything felt like it was slowly falling apart. As she tried to pick up the pieces, her father, who had always been a man of few words, surprised everyone by getting remarried to a woman named Hannah. Hannah was a kind and loving woman, but something about the sudden change made Mia feel off balance. Still, she tried to adjust. It wasn't until Hannah's son, Alex, moved into their home that things truly started to feel strange. Alex was older than Mia by about 7 years. He had the kind of charisma that drew people to him, and Mia couldn't deny that he was handsome, a bit of a mystery, and impossible to ignore. Alex, for his part, was kind but distant. He often retreated into his own world, which only fueled Mia's curiosity. She tried to convince herself that it was just a simple case of feeling like the new kid in her own home. But what Mia didn't know was that the bond between her and Alex would soon take an unexpected turn, one that would change their lives forever. Part 2. The Growing Connection. As months passed, the tension between Mia and Alex grew stronger, even if neither of them admitted it. They would often cross paths at home, but their interactions were always brief. Alex, for the most part, stayed away from family gatherings, preferring to spend his time alone. Mia didn't mind. She was trying to adjust to the new family dynamics herself, but every now and then she found herself seeking him out. There was something about Alex's quiet intensity that both intrigued and unsettled her. She had always been someone who liked to keep her emotions in check, but something about him seemed to break down her defenses. As the days turned into weeks, their brief exchanges grew longer, and soon Mia began to find herself waiting for those moments when their eyes would meet across the room. One evening, after a long day at work, Mia found herself alone in the kitchen. She was just finishing up a quick dinner when she heard the door creak open. It was Alex, back from one of his late-night walks. "Hey, Mia," he greeted her casually, though his voice had an almost imperceptible hesitation. "Hi, Alex. How was your walk?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Alex always seemed to take walks to clear his mind. "It was fine," he replied, giving her a half-smile. There was a long pause before he added, "You look good. I mean, you look like you're doing well." Mia could feel her cheeks heat up. She smiled awkwardly, turning back to the sink. "Thanks, I guess. It's been a rough year." Alex stepped closer. "I know. It's been tough on all of us." Their eyes met for a split second, and for a brief moment, Mia felt something shift between them. She couldn't quite place it, but there was a quiet understanding, a shared experience of grief that made her feel like she wasn't alone in her sorrow. Part 3. A Moment of Weakness. It was on the night of Alex's 26th birthday when things changed. Mia had always known that Alex had a dark side, one that he rarely shared with anyone. He had never been a fan of big parties or celebrations. So, when Mia and her father invited him to dinner, he reluctantly agreed, but there was something about the night that felt different. The evening started out like any other family dinner, but as the night wore on, the tension between Alex and Mia became palpable. They kept making excuses to talk to each other, their conversations lingering longer than necessary, their proximity to one another growing as the night progressed. After dinner, Mia found herself cleaning the kitchen while her father and Alex went outside to chat. As she dried the dishes, she found herself glancing toward the door, her thoughts suddenly clouded with a mix of curiosity and confusion. It wasn't until she heard a soft knock on the doorframe that Mia snapped out of her daze. It was Alex standing there in the doorway. His eyes were intense, but there was something different, something vulnerable in them. "Mia," he started softly, "can we talk for a minute?" Mia swallowed hard, trying to hide her nerves. "Sure, Alex. What's up?" He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The tension between them was so thick she could practically taste it. "I've been thinking," Alex said, his voice lower than usual. "I think we've been dancing around this for months and I can't do it anymore." Before Mia could respond, he stepped closer to her. The air between them was charged now, electric. Without thinking, Mia took a step back, but Alex's gaze didn't falter. His lips curled into a half-smile. "What are you thinking, Alex?" Mia asked, her voice barely a whisper. He took another step forward, closing the space between them. For a brief moment, their faces were mere inches apart. The world seemed to stop as Mia's heart raced. Was this what she thought it was? Was he really about to kiss her? And then it happened. He kissed her. Mia's body froze in shock, her mind screaming for her to push him away. But she couldn't. Her body responded instinctively to his touch, and for that brief moment, it felt like everything else in the world had disappeared. Part 4. The Consequences of Desire. The kiss lingered longer than either of them had expected. Mia pulled away slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked up at Alex, whose expression was a mixture of regret and desire. "Mia," he began, his voice hoarse, "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. But I couldn't help myself." Mia stepped back, trying to collect herself. "Alex, we can't, this is wrong." He nodded slowly, stepping away from her. "I know. But the moment I saw you, something changed. I never meant for this to happen." The weight of the moment settled in. What had just happened? Mia had always thought of Alex as a brother, someone she could trust, but this was something entirely different. She felt ashamed, guilty for crossing that line. "I don't know what's wrong with me," Alex murmured. "I've been feeling this way for a while now. But it's like I couldn't stop it." Mia shook her head, trying to make sense of the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "We need to stop this. We can't go down this path." But deep down, she knew it wasn't going to be that simple. Part 2. The Web of Deceit. Mia spent the next few days in a state of turmoil. The kiss, the touch, it all replayed in her mind, over and over again. She couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, not just toward her father, but toward herself. How had she let it go so far? It was an affair of the mind, long before it had become anything physical. The tension had built for months, silently, until it reached a breaking point. She had ignored it, pushed it down deep into her heart, but now it was out in the open. And there was no going back. Step 1. Confronting her feelings. That Saturday, Mia found herself standing in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. The guilt gnawed at her insides like a constant, suffocating presence. She had always prided herself on being the responsible one, the dependable one. But now she felt like she was losing control of everything. Alex wasn't just a man to her anymore, he had become the embodiment of temptation, a reflection of everything she had suppressed over the years. "Mia," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. "What did you do?" She knew, deep down, that this wasn't just about the kiss. It wasn't about a moment of weakness. No, it was about the fact that her life, the life she had worked so hard to build, was slipping through her fingers. Mia had to make a decision. She had to face the truth, and it wasn't going to be easy. Step 2. The Unspoken Truth. A week passed before Mia found the courage to face Alex again. Their paths hadn't crossed much since that night. She had avoided him, and he had respected that space, perhaps out of his own guilt. But today, the pull between them seemed impossible to ignore. She found him in the living room, looking out of the window at the farm. The sun had started to set, casting a warm orange glow over the fields. It was peaceful, serene, but Mia couldn't shake the tension in the air. "Alex," she said softly, her voice shaking. "We need to talk." He turned, his face serious but laced with vulnerability. "I know. I've been waiting for you to come to me." Mia's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her composure. "What happened between us, it shouldn't have happened." She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. "I don't want to hurt my family. And I can't hurt my father like this." Alex stood up and walked toward her, stopping just inches away. "Mia, I never meant for this to happen. I never thought I'd feel this way about you. But I can't change what's inside me." Mia could see the conflict in his eyes, the same internal battle she was fighting. "We can't keep pretending this doesn't exist, Alex. It's not just a simple mistake. This could tear everything apart." Step 3. The Struggle. For the next several days, Mia tried to keep her distance from Alex. She couldn't trust herself around him. Every time they were in the same room, she felt drawn to him, pulled by a force stronger than her willpower. It was like the magnetism between them was irresistible, and she could see that Alex felt the same. But she also knew the consequences of giving in. If anyone found out, if her father found out, it would be devastating. She had seen families torn apart by secrets and lies, and Mia didn't want to become another tragic tale. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. There were moments when she wanted to end everything, to walk away from Alex and never look back. But there were other times when the idea of living without him seemed just as unbearable. Step 4. The Invitation. It was the following weekend when the invitation came. Mia received a call from Sophia, her old childhood friend. Sophia was organizing a small gathering on her family's estate. It was an opportunity for Mia to escape, to get some distance from the overwhelming feelings of guilt and confusion. Sophia knew about the death of Mia's mother and had been trying to get in touch with her for months. Mia needed a distraction, something to take her mind off everything that had happened. The idea of a weekend away sounded like a blessing. But it also meant that Mia would be leaving Alex behind, at least for a short while. It was a chance to gather her thoughts, to put some perspective on what had become of her life. She accepted the invitation, knowing that it would be good for her to take a step back, even if it meant putting some physical distance between herself and Alex. Step 5. A break from the chaos. Mia drove out to Sophia's family estate early the next morning, leaving behind the chaos of her life on the farm. The sprawling property was nestled in the rolling hills of Virginia, the perfect place to escape. Sophia greeted her with a warm embrace. "I'm so glad you could make it, Mia. You needed this, trust me." Sophia's family estate was beautiful, serene, a place where Mia could relax and momentarily forget the storm raging in her heart. The weekend passed in a blur of peaceful walks, casual conversations, and indulgent meals. But as much as Mia tried to enjoy herself, the nagging thoughts about Alex crept back into her mind. At one point, she found herself alone in the garden, looking out at the horizon, her thoughts turning to Alex. Was this the right decision? The question haunted her. Part 3. A heart divided. The weekend at Sophia's family estate had done little to ease Mia's conflicted mind. For the first time in months, she felt an almost painful sense of peace, but it was also fleeting. As much as she wanted to escape, as much as she needed time away from the storm in her heart, the questions still lingered. Could she walk away from Alex and forget what they had shared? Could she live with herself if she did? Mia sat in the quiet solitude of the garden, feeling the gentle breeze against her face. The landscape around her was beautiful, vast fields stretching out in every direction. She closed her eyes, trying to push out the thoughts that had consumed her life lately. But it was useless. No matter how hard she tried to focus on the scenery, the image of Alex's face, the way he had kissed her, the way his eyes had held hers, kept invading her mind. Step 1. The return. When the weekend came to an end, Mia reluctantly packed her bags and prepared to return to the farm. She wasn't sure what she was expecting, but something in her gut told her that things could never go back to how they were before. The feeling of distance, of alienation from herself, only grew stronger as she made the drive back. She thought about Alex constantly. Would he act as though nothing had happened? Would he keep his distance, or would he try again, knowing how she had pushed him away? Mia's thoughts were a constant whirlwind, but she knew she couldn't run forever. The truth was, she had run away for the wrong reasons. She needed to face what was happening between them, not just hide from it. When Mia returned home, she found her father and Alex in the living room. Her father was busy reading a newspaper while Alex sat across from him, staring off into the distance, lost in his own thoughts. Mia paused at the door, hesitating. She hadn't planned on confronting him today, she thought she would have more time. But it seemed that the universe had other plans. "Hey, Mia," Alex said, noticing her standing in the doorway. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "We should talk." Step 2. Facing the truth. Mia walked into the room, her heart racing. She could feel Alex's eyes on her, but she refused to look at him. "Not yet." "Mia," Alex said again, more insistently this time. "I can't pretend anymore. I can't just go back to how things were." She finally met his gaze. There was no anger in his eyes, no bitterness. Just guilt. And something else, a longing, one that mirrored her own feelings. "I know what I did was wrong, Alex," Mia whispered. "But this can't keep happening. You're my brother's son, and I'm married. I can't betray everyone like this. I never meant for things to go this far." Alex stood up and stepped closer. His eyes softened. "Mia, I've been fighting myself for months. I never wanted to hurt you. But you have to understand, when I'm with you, it feels like I'm finally alive. Like I'm not just existing. I can't give that up. I don't want to." Mia stepped back, the weight of his words crashing down on her. The truth was staring her in the face. She was just as conflicted as he was. She had never felt so torn in her life. But she had to make a decision. "I love my family, Alex," Mia said softly. "And I love Emil. I can't keep doing this to him. And I can't hurt my father. I've already crossed a line, but I won't cross another." Alex's face fell. "So, you're going to walk away?" "I have to," she said, her voice breaking. "I have to fix this before it destroys everything." There was a long silence. Alex seemed to be weighing her words, but Mia could see the disappointment in his eyes. "I understand," he said after a long pause. "But I won't forget you, Mia. I can't. What we shared, it meant something." Mia nodded, her heart breaking in the process. She felt like she was breaking too. What they had was something she would never forget either, but she couldn't let herself be consumed by it. She needed to protect what was left of her life. Step 3. The consequences of choice. Over the next few days, Mia tried her best to keep her distance from Alex. She immersed herself in the routine of life, work, household chores, time with her children. But it wasn't enough to distract her. Every time she saw Alex, a part of her wanted to reach out to him, to pull him into her arms and let the world slip away. But she couldn't. She had made her choice, and there was no turning back now. One evening, as the sky darkened outside, Mia sat in the living room, trying to focus on a book. But all she could think about was Alex and the time they had shared. How had she gotten herself into this mess? Her phone rang, breaking the silence. It was Emil. "Mia," he said, his voice warm but tinged with concern. "How are you doing? You've been distant lately. Is everything okay?" Mia closed her eyes, holding back the tears that threatened to fall. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just tired." Emil paused as though sensing something was wrong. "Mia, you know you can tell me anything, right? If something's bothering you, we can work through it together." She swallowed hard. He didn't know about Alex. He didn't know what she had done. And she didn't want to burden him with the truth. "I know, Emil. I'm just overthinking things. I'm sorry." Step 4, the final confrontation. The following week, Mia was faced with an unexpected visitor. It was Alex again, standing at her door. He had a look of determination on his face, one that made Mia's heart race. "I need to talk to you," Alex said firmly. "This isn't over." Before she could protest, he stepped past her into the house. Mia's heart pounded in her chest. Was he really going to do this? Was he going to fight for something she knew could never be? "I'm not asking you to leave, Emil," Alex said quietly, almost in a whisper. "But I can't keep pretending that nothing ever happened. I need to know that we don't have to keep running from this. That we can be honest about what we feel." Mia felt the world shift around her. She wanted to reject him, to push him away. But in her heart, she knew the truth. She couldn't completely erase what they had. Part 4, the crossroads. Mia stood in the doorway, staring at Alex, whose words hung in the air like a heavy fog. He was there, standing in front of her, asking for the impossible. He wanted honesty, but could she truly give it to him? Could she even be honest with herself anymore? Mia's heart raced as she stepped back, motioning for him to come inside. The decision she had made to end their relationship seemed to haunt her with every glance, every word Alex spoke. Her emotions were still raw, like an open wound she couldn't avoid touching. "I never wanted this to happen, Alex," she said quietly, her voice cracking slightly. "But now we're at a point where there's no going back. I've chosen Emil. I've built a life with him. I can't destroy that." Alex's eyes softened with hurt and something else. Longing, a longing Mia couldn't ignore. "You don't have to destroy it, Mia. We don't have to destroy what we had. But I need you to look at me, really look at me, and tell me you don't feel the same way. I need to know you don't still want me. You can't keep pretending it was all just a mistake." Mia shook her head, feeling the weight of the moment. Could she keep lying to herself? Could she keep pretending that what she and Alex had shared hadn't meant anything? "You don't understand," Mia whispered, trying to steady her breathing. "I can't keep doing this. It's wrong. It was always wrong. I love Emil, I married him. I've built a family with him. I can't betray that, Alex. I'm not the woman I was before." Alex stepped closer to her, his voice low but filled with conviction. "I know you, Mia. I know you better than anyone. And I know that what we shared, it was real. You can't deny it. But it doesn't have to be the end. We can still be in each other's lives, we can still fix this." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She wanted to believe him, wanted to find a way to make it work without tearing everything apart. But there was a deeper part of her that knew if she allowed herself to fall back into that relationship, she would lose everything she had worked so hard to rebuild. "I can't do that, Alex," she said, stepping back, her voice firm now. "We've already crossed a line. You're my brother's son. I'm married. We can't just pretend that what we had doesn't come with consequences. We've been living in a fantasy for too long." Alex's face twisted in pain, his jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. He just stared at her as if trying to convince himself that she was wrong. Finally, he took a deep breath, his shoulders sagging as he seemed to accept her words. "Okay," he muttered, his voice thick with emotion. "But don't think this is easy for me. Don't think I can just forget about what we've shared. I never asked for any of this, Mia. I never wanted to hurt you or your family. But I don't know how to just walk away from it." Step 2, consequences and guilt. The next few days passed in a blur for Mia. She had made her decision, and yet the guilt gnawed at her. She tried to go about her daily life, but everything felt different. When she looked at Emil, her husband, she saw the man she loved, the man who had given her a family. But when she closed her eyes, Alex's face was all she could see. The feelings she had tried so hard to bury were right there, waiting to rise again. She began to feel the weight of her own betrayal more than ever. How could she face Emil knowing what she had done? How could she look at him without feeling that deep sense of shame? One afternoon, as Mia was sitting in the living room, she heard Emil come in through the door. He was early, which was unusual. He walked toward her with a soft smile, but when he saw her distant expression, his smile faltered. "Mia?" Emil said, his voice gentle. "You've been off lately. Is everything okay?" Mia's heart dropped. She had been avoiding him as much as she could, but she couldn't keep running. She took a deep breath, looking up at Emil with eyes filled with uncertainty. I need to talk to you," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "There's something I've been hiding. Something I can't ignore anymore." Emil's face immediately turned serious. "What is it, Mia? You know you can tell me anything." The words were on the tip of her tongue, but Mia hesitated. She had never wanted to hurt Emil. She never wanted to tear their world apart. But the truth was starting to feel like a heavy weight she couldn't carry alone. "Mia, what's going on?" Emil asked, his tone turning more insistent. Taking a deep breath, Mia finally spoke. "I've made a mistake, Emil. A terrible mistake. And it's something I can never take back." Emil's face paled, his expression faltering. "What do you mean, a mistake?" Mia swallowed hard, trying to steady her emotions. I kissed Alex. There." She had said it. The words felt like they were suffocating her. She wanted to take them back, but she knew it was too late. She had crossed the line, and there was no way back now. Step 3. Emil's reaction. Emil stood in silence for a moment, his face unreadable. Mia watched his expression, feeling the weight of his stare. Was he going to shout, demand an explanation? Would he leave her? Finally, Emil spoke, his voice low and trembling. "How could you do this, Mia? How could you betray me like this? I trusted you." "I'm so sorry, Emil," Mia said, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I never meant for this to happen. But it did, and now I don't know what to do. I don't know if you can ever forgive me." Emil looked down, his fists clenched. "I don't know if I can, Mia. I don't know if I can forgive you for this. You've broken everything we had. You've broken me." Mia's heart shattered. She had never meant to hurt him, but she could see the pain in his eyes, the betrayal. This was her fault. All of it. "I'm sorry," Mia repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "I love you, Emil. But I was weak, and I let everything go too far." Emil walked toward the door, his back turned to her. Before he left, he paused and looked over his shoulder. "Take some time to think about what you've done, Mia," he said, his voice cold. "I need time. We both do." And with that he left. Part 5. The Heartbreak. Mia sat in the silence of the empty house, feeling the weight of the past few hours settling over her. Emil had left, his words hanging in the air like a heavy fog that she couldn't escape. Her confession had torn the fragile threads of trust they had built over the years. And now Mia was left alone with her thoughts, her guilt, and a decision that seemed impossible. The house that once felt like home now felt like a cage. She had lost Emil, possibly forever, and now she had to face the reality of what her actions had cost her. Step 1. Searching for answers. In the days that followed, Mia tried to go through the motions of life. She went to work, took care of the house, and continued her routines, but nothing felt right. Emil hadn't returned any of her calls or messages, and she hadn't seen him since that night. Mia had hoped, even prayed, that he would come back, that he would forgive her, that they could somehow move forward. But deep down, Mia knew that it wasn't that simple. The betrayal she had caused ran deeper than she had anticipated. Emil was a proud man. He didn't take betrayal lightly. He had trusted her, and she had broken that trust in the worst way possible. Mia found herself walking the same path that had led her to this point, but now everything seemed different. The guilt was overwhelming, and the thought of losing Emil felt like a physical ache. She couldn't imagine a future without him, without the life they had built together. As she sat in the living room, staring out the window at the now barren landscape of the farm, her phone buzzed. A message. She checked the screen, and her heart skipped a beat. It was from Alex. "Mia, I don't know what to say. I never wanted to hurt you. I never thought things would get this complicated. But I can't just pretend I don't care about you. I need to know how you're doing. If you want to talk, I'm here." Her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected to hear from him again, not after everything that had happened. He was the last person she should be talking to right now. But as she stared at the message, she couldn't help but feel the pull to respond. The connection they had shared was undeniable, and even though she knew it was wrong, a part of her still wanted to hear his voice, wanted to talk to him one last time. Step 2. The Dangerous Temptation. Mia couldn't shake the feeling that Alex was still a part of her life, that despite everything, she was somehow still tied to him. She had made her choice to try and fix things with Emil, but Alex's words, his presence in her life, couldn't be erased so easily. She debated for a long time, her fingers hovering over the keyboard of her phone. Should she respond? Was it a mistake to reach out to him again? She had promised herself that she wouldn't go down that path, that she would put her marriage first. But every time she closed her eyes, Alex's face was there, lingering in the back of her mind. With trembling hands, Mia typed out a message. Alex, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry for what happened. I know it was a mistake and I need to focus on my family now. Please, don't contact me again. I need space to fix things with Emil. She hesitated for a moment before hitting send, feeling a sense of finality wash over her. She knew it was the right thing to do, even if it hurt. There was no future with Alex. There was only the future she had with Emil if he would still have her. Step 3. Facing the fallout. The silence after sending the message was deafening. Mia had made her choice, but the consequences were far from clear. Emil was still avoiding her. She had no idea where he was or what he was doing, and the uncertainty gnawed at her. The house felt too empty, the quiet too loud. It wasn't until 2 days later that Emil finally returned. It was late in the evening when Mia heard the sound of the front door opening. She jumped up from the couch, her heart racing as she rushed to the hallway. Emil stood in the doorway, his face tired but calm. He had been away for days, and Mia could see that he hadn't come back to reconcile, he had come back for answers. I'm sorry, Mia said before he could speak. I never wanted to hurt you. I made a terrible mistake, and I don't know how to fix it. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. Emil didn't respond immediately. He simply stepped inside, his eyes never leaving hers. There was a long pause before he spoke, his voice low and steady. You've broken my trust, Mia. And I don't know if I can ever get that back. You say you want to fix this, but do you even know where to start? Can you even look at me without thinking of him? The words hit her like a slap in the face. She knew he was right. How could she ask him to forgive her when she had betrayed him in such an unforgivable way? I don't know, Mia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But I want to try. I love you, Emil. Please don't leave me. Emil didn't say anything for a moment. His face softened, but there was still a painful distance between them. I need time, Mia. Time to figure out if this is even something I can work through. You've destroyed the foundation of everything we had. And I need to understand if you can truly fix it. Mia nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I understand. I'll wait. I'll do anything. Step 4. The waiting game. Days passed in agonizing silence. Emil remained distant while Mia tried to find a way to rebuild what had been lost. She had started therapy, hoping that it would give her the tools she needed to repair the damage she had caused. But no amount of therapy could change the fact that she had broken something irreplaceable. Every time she passed by the empty spaces in their home, she was reminded of what she had jeopardized. And yet, despite everything, Mia couldn't let go of the hope that maybe, just maybe, Emil could find it in his heart to forgive her. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she was ready to fight for it. Part 6. A turning point. Mia's mind was a whirlwind as she laid in bed that night. The conversation with Emil had been draining, yet it had brought a sense of clarity she hadn't had before. He needed time. She needed time. But how long could she wait before she gave up everything? The guilt, the confusion, and the what-ifs filled her mind. Had she made the wrong choice by telling Emil the truth? Should she have kept her secret? Would she be better off with Alex, or was that just a temporary escape from the pain she was feeling? Mia lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for answers to come. She had promised Emil she would wait, but waiting was the hardest part. She loved him, yet she had betrayed him in the worst possible way. And Alex? Alex was still in her heart, still lurking in the background. She could still feel the tingling memory of the kiss they had shared, and she knew that would haunt her for a long time. Step 1. A moment of clarity. The next morning, Mia woke up early. She didn't feel like going to work, but she forced herself to. Routine was the only thing that kept her grounded at this point. She needed to do something, anything, to get her mind off the mess she had created. As she walked through the house, her eyes fell on the family photo sitting on the mantel. It was from their last vacation, a photo of her, Emil, and the kids all smiling and happy. The picture seemed so far removed from the painful reality she was living now. She thought about what Sophia had said about being honest with herself. What was she really looking for? What did she want out of this life? She realized she couldn't keep holding on to the past. She had to make a choice. And the longer she waited, the harder it would be to move on from the past. Step 2. The phone call. Mia needed to talk to someone. She picked up her phone, but instead of calling Sophia like she had planned, she found herself typing Alex's name into the search bar. She paused for a moment, unsure of what to do, but before she could stop herself, she pressed the call button. The phone rang once, then twice, before Alex's voice answered. Mia, he said, his voice tight. What's going on? She swallowed hard, her throat dry. She hadn't planned on calling him. She wasn't sure why she had. Maybe it was the loneliness, the pain, or the need for closure. I just needed to talk to you, Mia said quietly. I've been trying to make sense of everything, but I feel lost. I feel like I can't breathe, like everything is suffocating me. Alex's voice softened. I understand. I've been feeling the same way. It's not easy for either of us. But Mia, we can't keep doing this. We have to figure out what we really want from all of this. You deserve happiness and so do I. But I can't keep hanging on to something that's already broken. Mia felt a lump form in her throat. The pain of the truth was starting to weigh down on her. She had made so many mistakes and she was starting to see the consequences of her actions. I know, Mia whispered. But I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if I even deserve to be happy anymore. Alex paused before responding. Mia, you do. You're a good person. And I'll always care about you. But sometimes the hardest thing is letting go of what we think we need in order to move forward. Mia closed her eyes, her heart heavy. She knew he was right. The path forward wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I'll talk to Emil, she said, her voice steady now. I'll do whatever it takes to fix what I've broken. Step 3, the confrontation with Emil. Later that evening, Emil came home. Mia had spent the afternoon thinking about their conversation about what she needed to say to him. She was determined to face the truth, no matter how difficult it was. Emil entered the living room, his eyes immediately locking with hers. There was no avoiding this anymore. She had to face the consequences of her actions head-on. Mia, Emil said, his voice serious. I've been thinking about everything. And I think it's time we have one final conversation about this. Mia stood up from the couch, her hands shaking. Emil, I've made so many mistakes. I'm not proud of what I've done. I never meant to hurt you, but I did. And I need you to know that I take full responsibility for it. I love you and I don't want to lose you. Emil's face softened, though there was still a deep sadness in his eyes. Mia, I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. You've betrayed me. But I also know that I still love you. And I don't want to lose everything we've built. I'm just not sure what the future looks like for us. Mia felt her heart break as she heard his words. She knew that this was her fault. All of it. But hearing Emil's pain made her realize just how deep the wound she had caused truly was. I don't want to lose you either, Emil, she said, her voice breaking. But I can't keep living like this. We need to figure out if there's still a future for us. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. Step 4, the decision. Mia knew what she had to do now. She had to make a decision, one that would affect not only her but everyone involved. She couldn't keep living in the past and she couldn't keep running away from the consequences of her actions. I'm going to fix this, Emil, she said firmly. But I need you to be patient with me. I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to show you that I'm committed to us. Emil nodded slowly. I'm not promising anything, Mia. But I'm willing to try. Let's take it one day at a time. Mia felt a sense of relief wash over her. It wasn't the resolution she had hoped for, but it was a start. A start toward healing, toward rebuilding the trust that had been broken. Part 6, the weight of the past. The days after that conversation with Emil were filled with quiet moments, moments where Mia found herself constantly replaying their words over and over in her mind. It had been a relief to finally say everything out loud, to admit the mistakes she had made. But it was also terrifying. The truth was, Mia didn't know if they could ever be the same again. Could love really overcome such betrayal? Could Emil ever trust her again? She woke up early the next morning, the light filtering through the curtains, and for a moment she forgot about everything that had happened. For just a moment, life felt normal. But as soon as she opened her eyes, reality set in again. Emil was still there, in the house, still processing everything. And Mia knew that nothing would be the same. The emotional scar was too deep for her to believe things could go back to how they were before. Step 1, the continued struggle. Mia spent the following weeks trying to make sense of what had happened. She was working harder than ever, distracting herself with tasks, trying to prove to Emil, to herself, that she was ready to make things right. But each time she came home, the quiet tension between them felt impossible to ignore. Emil had become a shadow in the house, always there but distant, lost in his own thoughts. One evening Mia was cleaning up after dinner when Emil entered the kitchen. She could see the tiredness in his eyes, a tiredness that had become a permanent fixture on his face. He wasn't angry anymore, but the pain was still there, lingering beneath the surface. Mia, Emil said quietly, his voice hesitant. I need to talk to you. Mia stopped what she was doing and turned toward him, her heart hammering in her chest. What is it? He paused for a moment as if gathering his thoughts. Then, with a sigh, he spoke again. I've been thinking. A lot. And I don't want to keep avoiding this. But I don't think I can stay here if things stay the way they are. I'm not ready to forgive you, but I don't know if I can live with this distance between us forever. Mia's heart sank. She had been hoping that things would get better over time, that the weight of their past mistakes would gradually lift. But Emil's words hit her like a cold wave. I know, she whispered. I've been trying too, Emil. I don't want this distance. I don't want to lose you. He shook his head. It's not just about what you want, Mia. It's about what I need too. Mia's throat tightened as the reality hit her. She had no idea how to fix this. No matter how hard she tried, there were no easy answers. The damage was done, and it would take time, maybe years, before they could rebuild the trust they had lost. Step 2. Facing the fallout. The following week, the atmosphere in the house grew even more strained. Emil was pulling away. He had stopped sleeping in their bed, choosing to sleep in the guest room instead. Mia was afraid to even ask about it. She didn't want to push him, but the silence was suffocating. She tried to keep herself busy. She buried herself in work, cleaning, trying to hold onto the normalcy of life. But every time she walked through the house, she was reminded of what she had broken. Her thoughts constantly returned to Alex and the consequences of their actions. She couldn't escape it. One night, after dinner, she stood in front of the mirror, brushing her hair. She looked at herself, but for the first time in a long time, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. The guilt was written all over her face. The shame, the confusion. It was there in every line of her expression. She had lost herself somewhere along the way, and she wasn't sure how to find her way back. Step 3. The message from Alex. The next morning, Mia's phone buzzed as she was getting ready for work. It was a message from Alex. Mia, I know this is the last thing you probably want right now, but I can't stop thinking about you. I don't want to complicate things further, but I need to know if you're okay. Please don't shut me out. I'll be here when you're ready. Mia stared at the screen for a long time, the message echoing in her mind. She had pushed Alex away after their last conversation. She had told him that she needed to focus on Emil, to rebuild her marriage. But it had been hard. She had lied to herself, pretending she didn't still feel the connection between them. But could she really keep talking to Alex? Could she continue this dangerous dance, knowing that it could destroy everything? She quickly put her phone down, refusing to let herself think about it further. The only thing that mattered now was Emil and their marriage. But as the day went on, she found herself questioning everything. Was it fair to Emil? Was it fair to stay in a marriage when her heart was still torn between the man she loved and the man she had betrayed? Step 4. A difficult decision. By the end of the week, Mia's mind was made up. She couldn't keep running from the truth. She had to face the consequences of her actions, no matter how hard it would be. That night, after Emil had come home from work, Mia called him into the living room. Her heart was heavy, but she knew she had to speak. Emil, she said, her voice shaking. I can't keep pretending like everything is okay. I've made a decision. He looked at her, his face full of caution. What do you mean? I've been lying to myself, Emil. I've been avoiding the truth. But I need to be honest with you. I can't keep living like this. I'm not asking for your forgiveness right now, but I need you to know that I'm ready to face whatever happens. I don't want to hurt you anymore. Emil stared at her, processing her words. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft but firm. I don't know what to say to that, Mia. I need more time. I don't know if I'll ever trust you again, but I do know that I want to try. I want to see if we can fix this. Mia felt a strange sense of relief wash over her. She had taken the first step, and maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for their marriage. But Mia knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. And that, in itself, was both terrifying and freeing. Part 7. The Rebuilding. Mia stood by the window the next morning, staring out at the sprawling fields beyond her house. It was a crisp, cool morning, but her mind was clouded with thoughts of the past and the difficult road ahead. Emil's words had lingered in her mind since their conversation the night before. I want to try. They were words that gave her a glimmer of hope, but also filled her with fear. She had never imagined she would be in a position like this, standing at the crossroads of her marriage, wondering if it could ever be repaired. The weight of the mistakes she had made hung heavily over her. Every step forward in trying to heal their relationship felt like a new beginning, but also a constant reminder of the betrayal that had shattered everything. The tension between them was palpable, but Mia was determined not to let it consume her. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The hardest part was going to be figuring out how to move forward with honesty and patience, both for herself and for Emil. She knew that healing couldn't happen overnight, but she also realized that the first step in rebuilding her marriage was facing the consequences of her actions. Step 1. Starting fresh. The following week, Mia asked Emil if they could sit down and talk. She had spent the past few days thinking about how they could move forward, but they both needed a fresh start, a chance to rebuild trust and move past the hurt that had accumulated over the past months. Emil agreed, and they sat in the living room facing each other across the couch. There was still a distance between them, an invisible wall that neither of them knew how to tear down. "I've been thinking about what you said," Mia began, her voice steady but laced with vulnerability. "I know things haven't been easy for either of us. I don't expect everything to go back to normal right away. But I'm ready to put in the work, Emil. I want to fix this." Emil looked at her, his gaze softened, but there was still a hint of caution in his eyes. "I don't know if we can just fix this overnight, Mia. It's going to take time. It's not just about trusting you again. It's about learning how to trust myself too, how to trust that I made the right choice in staying." Mia nodded, feeling the heavy burden of his words. She knew he wasn't making it easy for her. This wasn't going to be a quick fix. But she was willing to try. She had to prove to him that she was willing to fight for their love, for their family. "I understand," she said softly. "And I'm not asking for anything more than time. I'm not asking for your forgiveness right away. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I want us to heal together." The silence between them was thick, but there was a shift, a moment where it felt like they had both taken the first steps towards something that resembled hope. Step 2. Rediscovering trust. As the days passed, Mia tried to reconnect with Emil on a deeper level. They spent time together, doing simple things that they used to enjoy, cooking dinner together, taking walks, talking about their day. It wasn't easy, the weight of their past mistakes hung over everything they did. But they tried to move forward, one small step at a time. But despite their efforts to rebuild, Mia couldn't help but notice the small signs of distance that still lingered between them. Emil was still guarded, still hesitant to open up fully. And Mia, too, found herself questioning her every move. She wondered if the trust that had once bound them so tightly could ever be restored. One evening, after a quiet dinner, Emil spoke up. "Mia, I've been thinking about something. I think it's time we try something different. I don't want us to just keep pretending that everything is okay. I want us to start building a new foundation, something honest." Mia listened intently, unsure of what he meant, but her heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Emil was ready to move forward in a way that didn't involve the past constantly resurfacing? "What do you mean?" she asked, feeling a surge of hope. "I think we need to start by addressing the past," Emil said carefully. "We can't keep burying it. We need to talk openly about everything. We need to be honest with each other, even when it's hard. And we need to understand why things went wrong so we don't repeat the same mistakes." Mia swallowed hard, the reality of his words hitting her like a wave. Honesty. The word echoed in her mind. It was what they had been missing all along. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's do it. Let's talk. Let's be honest with each other." Step 3. Facing the past. That night, they sat down together after dinner, facing each other in a way they hadn't done in months. The vulnerability in the room was palpable, but it was the only way forward. There was no more pretending that things were okay. They had to confront the issues that had shattered their foundation. Emil spoke first. "Mia, I've been carrying around this anger for a long time. I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to look at you and not feel like you had betrayed me. I've been trying to act like everything is fine, but it's not. I need to know why you did it. Why did you let things go so far?" Mia closed her eyes, the weight of his question pulling her back into the dark days of the affair. It wasn't easy to relive those moments, but she knew she had to answer. She had to face her own actions. "I don't have a good excuse, Emil," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know why I did it. I was lost. I didn't feel like myself anymore. And I didn't want to confront the pain I was feeling. But that's no excuse. What I did was wrong. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Emil listened, his face unreadable. For a moment, there was only silence, and then he spoke again. "I'm not sure what to do with all of this, Mia," he said quietly. "But I need to understand you better. I need to know what happened so I can move forward. We can't keep living in the shadows of what happened before." Mia nodded. "I understand. And I'm ready to tell you everything. I want to rebuild with you. For us." Step 4. The path forward. For the next few weeks, Mia and Emil continued their honest conversations. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Each conversation, no matter how painful, brought them a little closer. They were starting to piece together the broken parts of their relationship, one small step at a time. But despite the progress they were making, there was still a lingering doubt, a sense of unease that neither of them could shake. Could they really rebuild after all that had happened? Could they truly find a way back to the love they once shared? Only time would tell. Part 7. The Reckoning. Mia sat in the quiet of the living room, the sounds of the evening wind outside the windows doing little to quiet the whirlwind inside her mind. It had been weeks since their last deep conversation. Things had felt better, but the distance between her and Emil was still palpable. He was trying, Mia could feel that, but the pain of what had happened was always there, lurking beneath the surface. And the fear that it would never go back to normal still haunted her. Her heart had longed for Emil's forgiveness, and though he had agreed to give her the time and space to prove herself, Mia was still unsure of whether it was enough. Emil had been trying. He had been more present, but there were still those long stretches of silence between them where words felt empty. The love they had once shared felt distant, and while they both wanted to move forward, Mia wasn't sure if either of them had the strength to face what lay ahead. Step 1. The Reluctant Reality. Mia's phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Hey, I've been thinking about you. How are things with Emil?" Mia paused, reading the message. She hadn't spoken to Sophia in a few days, but she knew that her friend would always offer an unbiased perspective. And Mia needed that now more than ever. She quickly typed back. "It's still tough. We're trying, but there's this weird space between us. I'm not sure if it's ever going to be the same." Sophia's response was swift. "Mia, you've been through so much. It's going to take time. Don't rush it. If Emil's willing to work through this with you, that's a good sign. But you also need to work on yourself too. You need to make sure you're not just trying to fix things because you're afraid of losing him. Think about what you need, not just what he needs." Mia stared at the message, her thoughts running wild. She realized how right Sophia was. For so long, she had focused on what Emil needed, how to fix their relationship for him, but what did Mia need? Was she holding on to this marriage because it was easier than facing the reality that her own mistakes had set the course of everything else? Or did she truly believe in the future they could rebuild together? Step 2. The Self-Reflection. That night, Mia sat at her desk with a cup of tea, the warm steam rising into the cool air around her. It was late, but she couldn't sleep. She had always been the type of person who reflected, but this time it felt different. This wasn't about reflecting on how to make Emil happy anymore. It was about reflecting on her own happiness, her own needs. For the first time in months, Mia thought about who she was, not as Emil's wife, not as a mother, but as an individual. What had happened to her? Who had she become? When had she lost sight of herself? Mia grabbed a pen and began writing. She wrote about her childhood, her dreams, her deep-seated fears, and the choices she had made that had brought her to this point. It felt cathartic, but at the same time, the words on the paper felt like they didn't belong to her anymore. She had changed in ways that felt unrecognizable. As she wrote, she realized that for years she had placed everyone else's needs before her own. Emil's happiness, the family's needs, even her guilt over betraying Alex. It was time for her to focus on herself, to ask what she wanted from this marriage and if she even knew how to be the person Emil needed. Step 3. The Visit to the Therapist. The following week, Mia made an appointment with the therapist she had been avoiding. She had put it off for so long, convinced that she could handle everything on her own. But now she realized she was in over her head. She didn't know how to rebuild herself, and she didn't know how to rebuild her marriage. She needed help. The therapist's office was calm, quiet, with soft lighting and peaceful music playing in the background. Mia took a seat across from the therapist, feeling a wave of nervous energy sweep over her. But she was ready. She needed answers, and the first person who could help her understand the mess she was in was someone who had the tools to help her dig deeper. "I've been through a lot in my marriage," Mia began, her voice shaking as she spoke. "And now I don't know where to go. I don't know how to move forward. I've made so many mistakes and I feel lost." The therapist nodded, listening intently. "Tell me more about those mistakes, Mia. What do you think they say about where you are right now?" Mia swallowed, feeling the weight of her decisions. "I betrayed my husband," she said, her voice breaking. "I cheated, and I hurt him in ways that I can't take back. But what scares me is that I don't know if I can fix it. And I don't know if I even deserve to." The therapist looked at her with understanding. "Mia, mistakes don't define you. But you have to confront them, understand why you made them, and what you need from yourself to heal." Mia felt the floodgates open as she spoke about her past, about her inner turmoil, her doubts, and her overwhelming guilt. But for the first time, she felt like she was getting to the core of what had caused her to stray from the path she had built with Emil. Step 4. A moment of clarity. By the time Mia left the therapist's office, she felt a weight lifted off her shoulders. She had started to unpack the emotions that had been holding her back. The guilt, the shame, the pain. They hadn't gone away, but Mia had begun to understand them in a way she hadn't before. She realized she wasn't just living in regret. She was living in fear. Fear of losing Emil, fear of never being able to regain his trust, and fear of never feeling whole again. But the truth was, she had to start with herself. Healing couldn't come from Emil's forgiveness alone. It had to come from within her. Only then could she offer him the love and trust he deserved. Step 5. A conversation with Emil. That evening, Mia and Emil sat down once again in the living room. The house was quiet, the kids were in bed, and the weight of everything seemed to settle in the air between them. "Mia," Emil said quietly, his voice uncertain. "I've been thinking a lot, and I know it's been hard for both of us, but I don't want to keep living like this. We need to decide where we go from here. Do we want this to work? Can we fix this?" Mia looked at him, the man she had once thought she could never lose. She had made so many mistakes, and yet he was still there, still willing to try. "I want this to work, Emil," she said, her voice steady and clear. "But it's not just about you and me. I need to find myself again. And I need to do it for me. For us." Emil looked at her, a flicker of something softening in his eyes. "I don't know what the future holds for us, Mia, but I'm willing to try. We'll figure it out. But it's going to take time." Part 8. The Journey to Healing. Mia had never felt more alone than in those early days of trying to rebuild her life. She had spent so much time focusing on everyone else's needs, so much time running from the consequences of her own choices. But now, sitting in the silence of her own mind, she realized that true healing could only begin when she faced those consequences head-on. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy, and the scars from her betrayal would never fully fade. But Mia was determined. For the first time in a long time, she could see a glimpse of hope. A hope that, maybe, just maybe, she could find herself again and repair the bond she had shattered with Emil. But as she sat across from him at the kitchen table that evening, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still so much to work through. Step 1. Facing the reality of their marriage. Emil had been quiet lately, still processing everything. Mia could see the pain in his eyes, but he wasn't speaking much. His decision to stay was a choice, one that required more strength than Mia could comprehend. But what did it mean for them? Were they really moving forward, or was this just an illusion? A way of pretending that things would be okay when, in fact, they were broken beyond repair? Mia needed to know the answer. She couldn't keep living in this limbo, waiting for something to change without any action behind it. One evening, after dinner, she gathered the courage to ask the question that had been eating at her. "Emil," she began, her voice shaky but firm. "I know we've been trying to work through things, but I need to know, are we really trying to fix this? Or are we just holding on to something because we don't know how to let go?" Emil set his glass down, his gaze dropping to the table before meeting her eyes. "Mia," he said slowly, "I've been thinking about that. I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure. This is hard. It's hard to look at you and not feel the betrayal. But I also know that I love you, and I want to try. But we need to be honest with each other." Mia nodded, her heart heavy. She hadn't expected Emil to have all the answers. She had no answers herself. But the truth was, they couldn't fix what was broken without confronting the underlying issue. The issue wasn't just her affair. It was about trust, forgiveness, and healing. And without all three, their marriage was doomed to fail. "We need to be honest," Mia said softly. "And I need to do better. I know I can't change the past, but I want to do everything I can to prove that I'm here for you." Emil looked at her, his face softening. "I want to believe you, Mia, but it's going to take time. We have to rebuild this brick by brick." Step 2. The therapy session. After their conversation, Mia realized that they couldn't continue without external help. They needed therapy, professional help to guide them through the maze of emotions, guilt, and pain that had clouded their relationship. She had been putting it off for so long, but now it felt like the only way forward. They scheduled their first session with a therapist specializing in relationship recovery. The first few minutes of the session were uncomfortable. They were both sitting there, unsure of how to even start the conversation. The therapist, Dr. Hart, spoke first, her calm voice cutting through the tension. Mia, Emil, I know that you've been through a lot. What you're dealing with is not easy. But the first thing we need to address is that healing starts with forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't mean you forget what happened, but it means you allow the possibility of moving forward. Mia looked at Emil, her heart aching. She knew that forgiveness was the key to their healing, but she also understood that it couldn't be rushed. Emil had every right to be hurt, every right to feel betrayed. Dr. Hart continued, Mia, it's not just Emil who needs to forgive you. You need to forgive yourself too. You can't carry the weight of guilt forever. You have to give yourself permission to move forward. Mia felt the weight of those words sink deep into her chest. Forgive herself? How could she ever forgive herself for what she had done? She had torn apart everything she had worked for, everything she had built with Emil. But Dr. Hart's words lingered in her mind. Forgiveness, maybe it wasn't just for Emil. Maybe it was for her too. Step 3, a glimpse of hope. The weeks that followed were filled with difficult conversations, emotional breakthroughs, and moments of doubt. Every day felt like an emotional roller coaster. Some days, things felt like they were getting better, and other days, it felt like they were slipping further apart. But there were moments of connection too. Moments when they would sit together, just talking, and Mia would feel a glimmer of hope. Slowly, Emil seemed to be opening up again. There were times when their laughter returned, and for those few moments, the past seemed like a distant memory. They were rebuilding, piece by piece. One evening, Emil surprised Mia by preparing dinner, a dish he had learned to make for their anniversary years ago. He had insisted on cooking that night, and as Mia entered the kitchen, she couldn't help but smile. This looks amazing, she said, watching as he set the plates down on the table. Emil smiled back, his eyes warm, though there was still a hint of caution in his gaze. We've been through a lot, Mia, Emil said quietly. But I want to try. I want to see if we can find our way back to each other. Mia's heart swelled. For the first time in weeks, she saw the glimmer of hope that had been missing from their relationship. They were not out of the woods yet, but they were starting to find their way. Step 4, the future. As the weeks turned into months, Mia and Emil continued their journey together. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the pain felt too overwhelming. But they kept moving forward, slowly, day by day. Mia realized that her relationship with Emil wasn't just about making things right, it was about building something new. The old version of their marriage could never be recovered. They had to create a new foundation, one built on honesty, forgiveness, and trust. It would take time, and Mia knew it wasn't going to be simple. But as they stood together at the end of the day, holding hands and looking at the life they were building together, Mia felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Part 8, the path forward. The days seemed to pass in a blur for Mia, but in a way that felt different. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was finally coming back to herself. The work that she and Emil had been putting into their relationship was not without its struggles, but she could see the shifts, the small victories. There were moments when their conversations felt lighter, when their laughter felt more genuine. Even the silence between them no longer felt like a heavy burden, but rather a comfortable space. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. Mia had spent so much time trying to fix things for Emil, trying to make everything right for him, but now she realized that fixing herself, working on her own healing, was just as important. She couldn't expect Emil to heal if she hadn't addressed her own mistakes and fears. And slowly, the more she confronted her own shortcomings, the more she saw a path forward for them both. Step 1. A new perspective. It was an unusually warm evening when Mia and Emil sat down together after dinner. They were no longer living in the suffocating silence they had been in before. Things had changed. The air between them felt lighter, more open. Mia had been working on herself, attending therapy, focusing on building a better relationship with herself, and taking steps to prove to Emil that she was committed to rebuilding. She had come to terms with her past mistakes, and it was clear that Emil had also made significant progress. He had become more open to talking about his feelings, less guarded about the pain she had caused him. Mia, Emil said, his voice filled with both hesitation and sincerity. I've been thinking about everything, and I know things aren't perfect between us. But I can't help but feel like we're starting something new here. Maybe it's not the same as before, but maybe that's not such a bad thing. Mia looked at him, the corners of her mouth curling upward. You're right. We're building something new, something better, and I'm not going to take that for granted. Not again. Emil smiled back, his eyes softening. I think we've learned a lot about ourselves, about each other, and I think if we keep working on it, we might just find a way forward. A better way forward. Mia's heart swelled as she looked at him. It wasn't a promise of perfection, but it was something even more precious, hope. Step 2, moving beyond the past. The following months were filled with growth, both personal and as a couple. Mia continued her therapy sessions, working through the guilt and self-doubt that had weighed her down for so long. She focused on learning how to forgive herself, how to break free from the chains of shame she had been carrying. She started to realize that she didn't have to be defined by her past mistakes. Emil, too, had been working through his own feelings. The anger and hurt hadn't disappeared overnight, but they were beginning to fade. The trust between them was slowly being rebuilt with every honest conversation, every small gesture of love and affection. They had both made mistakes, but they were also both learning to accept the fact that they were human, capable of growth. One evening, after another therapy session, Emil and Mia sat in their living room, the silence between them not heavy, but comfortable. I don't think I've ever really thanked you, Emil said, his voice soft. I don't think I've ever really told you how much I appreciate that you've stuck by me. You didn't give up on us, even when it was hard. Mia smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. I know I made a huge mistake, and I can't change that, but I want you to know that I'm here, Emil. I'm not going anywhere. I've learned more about myself than I ever could have imagined, and I'm willing to keep learning. I want us to have a future. Emil's gaze softened. We don't have to figure everything out today, but I think we're both heading in the right direction. We're both trying. Mia nodded. We're both trying. Step 3, family healing. As much as Mia and Emil were healing together, they also knew that their journey didn't stop there. The rest of their family, especially the kids, had been affected by the strain in their relationship. The tension in the house, the silence, the emotional distance. It had all taken its toll. Mia and Emil both knew that their healing was just the beginning, and it was time to bring the family back together. Mia called a family meeting, something they hadn't done in months. She had always prided herself on being an involved mother, but she knew that the division between her and Emil had affected everyone. Kids, Mia began, I know things have been hard, and I know you've probably felt the tension around here. Your dad and I have been going through some tough times, and I want to be honest with you about it. But we're working on it. We're working hard to fix things, and I want you to know that we're doing this for all of us. Her daughter, Lily, who was 15, looked up at her mother with wide eyes. Does that mean you and Dad are going to be okay? Like, really okay? Mia smiled softly, feeling a surge of affection for her children. I don't know what the future holds, sweetheart, but we're trying, and we're going to get through this together. Her son, Jake, 17, who had been quiet throughout the conversation, finally spoke up. I don't know what happened, but I can see that you guys are trying. That's all we can ask for, right? Emil nodded, his voice filled with sincerity. Exactly. We're trying and we're learning. We're not perfect, but we're doing our best. The family, though far from healed, began to come together. They were learning to trust each other again, and although the road ahead would still have its bumps, Mia felt a renewed sense of determination. She had taken the first steps toward healing her marriage, and now it was time to heal as a family. Step 4. The unfinished journey. As the months went by, Mia and Emil continued to work on their relationship. They learned to communicate better, to be patient, and to confront their issues head-on. The scars from the past remained, but Mia no longer felt defined by them. Healing, she realized, wasn't about erasing the past, it was about learning to live with it and moving forward. There were still moments of doubt. There were still days when the weight of what had happened felt too much to bear. But in those moments, Mia remembered the words Emil had said that night, the words that filled her heart with hope, were heading in the right direction. And for the first time in a long time, Mia believed him. They were heading in the right direction. Part 9, The Test of Time. The weeks after the family conversation had brought about a noticeable shift in the household. The weight of the betrayal wasn't entirely gone, but the space between Mia and Emil seemed to shrink. They were no longer walking around each other with cautious steps but were slowly learning to approach one another with understanding. For the first time in months, the house felt alive again. Laughter was no longer a rare occurrence, and the cold silences that had once filled every room were now replaced with conversations about their future, their children, and their plans for the life ahead. But the fear that had once consumed Mia was still there. Every moment of progress was tempered with the thought of what could happen if they couldn't continue this journey. Could their fragile reconciliation withstand the test of time? Or would it crumble under the weight of the mistakes they had made? Step 1. A shared responsibility. Mia and Emil had made it a point to go on regular dates to reconnect on a personal level away from the stress of the house and the emotional baggage that weighed them down. One night, they decided to take a walk together under the stars, a simple and peaceful activity that allowed them to just be together without any pretense or pressure. As they walked side by side along the path, Emil suddenly stopped and turned to her. His face was unreadable, and for a moment Mia's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't been expecting this, hadn't prepared for any deep conversation tonight. "I've been thinking," Emil said, his voice calm. "We've been doing better, but I feel like we need to address something. The kids. They've seen the change in us, but I think they need to hear it from us directly. I want to make sure they understand that we're working together, that we're not just doing this for us, but for them too." Mia paused, feeling a sense of unease. "You're right," she said softly. "They've been through a lot too. They've been carrying their own version of this burden, and I think we owe it to them to show that we're really committed to fixing everything." Emil nodded, taking her hand in his. "We've been so focused on our own healing that I think we've forgotten that the kids need to see the effort too. They need to know that this is a family decision, that we're all in this together." Mia felt a weight lift off her chest. She had always been the one to put the kids first, even when everything else seemed to be falling apart. And now it felt like Emil was ready to do the same. "Let's make it a point to show them that we're working together," she said, smiling. "That this isn't just about us as individuals, but about us as a family." Step 2. A new approach. The next family meeting was different from the last. This time, Mia and Emil had prepared themselves. They sat down with their children, calmly and openly, and talked about the changes they had been making in their relationship. They explained that healing wasn't a linear process, but that they were committed to it for their sake as a couple and for their family as a whole. "We've made a lot of mistakes," Emil began, "and we've hurt each other. But we're trying to fix it. We know that it hasn't been easy and that we've let you see parts of us that weren't pretty. But we want you to know that we're doing this together and we're committed to moving forward. We've always been a team, and that's not going to change." Lily, their 15-year-old daughter, looked at them with wide eyes. "So, you guys are really trying to stay together?" Mia nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. We love each other. And even though we've hurt each other, we're learning how to move forward. We're learning to trust each other again." Jake, their 17-year-old son, spoke up. "I've seen you both trying," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "It's not been easy, but I can see it. I think we just need time to get used to it." Mia smiled at him, feeling a sense of pride in her son. "Thank you, Jake. We're trying, and we know it's going to take time. But we're in this together." The kids seemed reassured, the tension in the room starting to ease. For the first time in a long time, Mia felt like they were all moving forward as a family, not just as two individuals trying to survive a storm. Step 3. A step toward the future. With the family now aware of their commitment to each other, Mia and Emil turned their focus toward rebuilding their relationship. The next few weeks were filled with small steps, reconnecting emotionally, attending therapy sessions, and most importantly, spending quality time together as a couple. They started doing things they had enjoyed before: the betrayal, weekend walks, cooking together, going to their favorite restaurant for dinner. It wasn't grand gestures that were needed anymore. It was the small moments that mattered, the kind of moments that had been lost in the midst of the storm. One weekend, as they walked through the park, holding hands, Emil turned to Mia, his eyes filled with something that hadn't been there before: peace. "Mia," he said, stopping to face her, "I can honestly say that I'm proud of us. We're not where we want to be yet, but we're heading in the right direction." Mia smiled, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. "I feel the same way. We've come so far, Emil. I know it's not perfect, but I think we can get there. Together." Emil took her hands in his and pulled her close. "I know we can. I know that we have something worth fighting for." Mia rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the weight of the past few months lift off her. It wasn't going to be easy, but they were fighting together. And that, she realized, was the key to rebuilding everything they had lost. Step 4. The future. As time went on, Mia and Emil worked hard to stay committed to each other. They learned to communicate better, to forgive more easily, and to cherish the moments they had together. Though there were still difficult days, there were also more good ones. They were rediscovering the love they had once shared, one piece at a time. Mia knew that the road ahead would continue to be a challenge, but for the first time in months she felt optimistic about the future. There was hope, not the kind of hope that came from illusion, but the kind that came from hard work, determination, and a willingness to confront the truth. And for Mia, that was enough. Part 9, Building the New Foundation, 5,000 Characters. Mia woke up the next morning to the soft sound of Emil in the kitchen. For the first time in months, the feeling of normalcy returned. The heaviness that had once followed every step, every conversation, every action had lessened. There was still much to be done, but Mia felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The road ahead was long and there would undoubtedly be obstacles, but today she felt hopeful. As she walked downstairs, Emil turned to her with a warm smile. "Morning," he said, holding up a freshly brewed cup of coffee. "Morning," Mia replied, her heart swelling. She could still feel the lingering distance between them, but it wasn't as wide as it had been before. Each day was a small step forward, and Mia was beginning to believe they could rebuild the life they once had. They sat down together at the breakfast table, the routine of their morning making her feel like they were slowly slipping back into something familiar and comforting. She had to remind herself to stay patient, to stay present. Trust couldn't be rushed and it couldn't be forced. Step 1, the decision to move forward. Emil had been more open lately, more willing to share his feelings, and Mia had noticed how their communication had grown. In the past, they had always communicated well, but now, after the betrayal, the barriers were coming down. They were talking about everything, the good, the bad, and the uncertain. "I've been thinking about something," Emil said as he placed his coffee cup down. "I think it's time for us to make a decision about our future. I can't keep living in limbo, neither can you. We need to make a choice." Mia's heart raced. Was he finally going to ask the question she had been dreading, or perhaps hoping for since they had begun this journey? "What kind of decision are you talking about?" she asked carefully, her hands gripping her coffee cup. Emil leaned back in his chair, his expression serious. "I think we need to decide if we're really going to make this work or not. I'm tired of walking around in uncertainty. I want to know if we're committed to rebuilding our future together, or if it's time for us to part ways. We need to make that decision for ourselves and for the kids." Mia felt the weight of his words. She had spent so much time focusing on the healing process, on making things right, that she hadn't considered that maybe Emil needed something more. It wasn't just about moving forward, but about choosing to move forward. "I understand," Mia replied softly. "I'm willing to fight for us, Emil. But I need to know that you are too. We can't keep pretending that things are okay when we both know they're not." Emil nodded. "I'm willing to try, Mia. I think we've both made a lot of mistakes, but we've also shown that we're capable of learning. We just have to decide if we can forgive each other, if we can truly start over." Mia's heart felt full. This wasn't the perfect solution, but it was a step in the right direction. And for the first time in a long time, she believed that they could make it through. Step 2, setting boundaries. After their conversation, Mia and Emil decided it was time to set boundaries, not only for their relationship but for their family as well. They couldn't continue to heal unless they were clear about what they both needed. They had to create a space where they could both work on their healing, individually and as a couple. It wasn't going to be easy, but they were both ready to give it their all. Emil suggested that they start by having open conversations about their expectations, what they needed to feel supported and loved, and what they needed from each other. Mia agreed wholeheartedly. Communication had always been one of the pillars of their relationship, but now it needed to be something more, something they actively worked on every day. "We need to learn to communicate better, Emil," Mia said. "We need to make sure we're on the same page about what's important to us. And we need to be honest, no more hiding things or avoiding tough conversations." Emil nodded, his face softening. "I agree. I don't want to hide anymore. I don't want to be afraid of what comes next." Step 3, the first steps toward reconciliation. The weeks that followed were filled with many conversations, both small and large. Emil and Mia spent time together rebuilding their relationship, attending therapy together, and learning how to express their feelings openly. Every day, they chipped away at the walls they had built over the years, learning to trust again. There were times when old patterns resurfaced, times when Emil would pull away or when Mia would feel the urge to doubt their progress. But they were committed. They were in this together, and for the first time in a long time, Mia saw the possibility of a new future with Emil. One evening, as they sat on the porch together, watching the sunset, Emil turned to Mia. His voice was quiet, but there was a certainty in it that she hadn't heard in months. "I know things aren't perfect," Emil began, "but I think we're getting there. We're learning how to trust again. And that's a good sign. I can't promise that everything will be easy from here on out, but I want to give us a chance." Mia smiled, her heart swelling. I'm glad you're here, Emil. And I'm glad we're doing this together. We have a long way to go, but I'm willing to keep going as long as you are. Emil took her hand in his, the weight of their shared journey felt in every touch. I'm here, Mia. I'm here for as long as you need me. Step 4. Looking toward the future. As the months passed, Mia and Emil continued their work together and separately. They spent time learning new ways to connect with each other, creating new rituals that helped them feel close. They focused on rediscovering the joy they had once shared, and slowly but surely they began to rebuild their foundation. They knew there would be days when the past would resurface, when the pain of betrayal would come crashing in again. But they were ready for those days. They had faced the hardest part together, and they had survived. And for the first time, Mia truly believed that they could have a future. Not a perfect one, but one built on honesty, trust, and love. And that was enough. Part 10. A New Beginning. Mia woke up that morning with a feeling she hadn't had in a long time: hope. The past few months had been a journey filled with pain, self-discovery, and growth. There had been times when she didn't know if they would make it, but she had kept moving forward, kept pushing herself to be better for Emil, for their children, and most importantly, for herself. She felt like she was standing at the edge of something new, something that, for the first time in a long time, didn't feel like a burden but a chance. A chance to truly move forward. Today wasn't just another day. It was the day she and Emil were going to take the next step, whatever that would be. Step 1. Facing the past, once more. Mia had always known that healing wasn't a linear process. It wasn't something that could be fixed with a simple conversation or a grand gesture. No, healing took time. And it took effort from both sides. She had spent months trying to rebuild the trust between her and Emil, but today she felt like it was finally time for them to have one last, final conversation about everything. It was time to confront the past one more time, to make sure that the ground they were standing on wasn't just a fragile truce, but a solid foundation for their future. She found Emil in the kitchen, preparing breakfast as he usually did. The quiet hum of the coffee machine filled the space between them, but there was a tension in the air. This conversation had been on her mind all week, and she knew it wouldn't be easy. But it was necessary. Emil, she began, her voice a little shaky, can we talk? I think we need to address everything one last time. Emil turned, his expression serious. Of course, he said, setting the spatula down. What's on your mind? Mia took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. I know we've been through so much already. But I need to know that we're both really ready to move forward. I need to hear that you believe in us. That you can forgive me fully. And that you're not just staying because it's easier than facing the truth. Because I can't keep pretending everything is okay if you're not truly ready to let go of the past. Emil's gaze softened as he listened, and for the first time in weeks, Mia could see something different in his eyes. Hope. It wasn't just the hope of rebuilding, it was the hope of truly starting anew. I've been thinking about that too, Mia, Emil said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. And I do believe in us. I believe in our love. But you're right, there's still a lot we have to work through. I don't know if I'll ever forget what happened, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to rebuild with you, piece by piece. Mia's heart skipped a beat. The relief she felt in that moment was overwhelming. She had feared that Emil was only staying out of obligation, but his words told her that he was truly in this with her, for the long haul. I'm willing to fight for this too, Emil, she said softly. I don't expect it to be perfect. But I want us to have a future. Together. Step 2. Healing together. The following weeks were filled with an intensity Mia had never felt before. They had made the decision to truly move forward, but it wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt, moments when the past would rear its ugly head. But each day they faced those moments together. Side by side. Therapy continued to be a vital part of their healing process. They didn't shy away from the difficult conversations, no matter how painful. Instead, they embraced them, knowing that it was the only way to truly move past the hurt and into the future. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, Mia and Emil sat in their living room, their hands intertwined. I never thought we would get here, Emil said quietly. I never thought we could come this far. But we have, Mia. We've done the work. And we're still doing it. I see the effort in you, and it makes me believe we have a shot at this. Mia looked at him, her heart filled with love. We do have a shot, Emil. We do. I know it hasn't been easy, but we've both learned so much. And I'm so grateful for you. For us. Emil smiled, his hand gently brushing hers. I'm grateful for you too. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I want to face it with you. Step 3. A new chapter. It was a Sunday morning when they decided to take the next step in their healing. After months of emotional work, they felt ready to make their commitment to each other, not just emotionally, but also publicly. Emil suggested they renew their vows, something small but meaningful. It wasn't about grand gestures, but about reaffirming their love and dedication. With their closest friends and family in attendance, Mia and Emil stood together under a quiet oak tree in their backyard. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow across the scene. The air was filled with the sound of birds chirping and the distant hum of the world continuing to move forward. "Emil," Mia began, her voice soft yet firm, "I stand here before you not as the person I once was, but as the person I am becoming. I promise to love you, to trust you, and to never take our relationship for granted again. We've been through so much, but I know now that our love is worth fighting for." Emil smiled at her, his voice full of emotion as he spoke. "Mia, I stand before you, knowing that I've made mistakes, and so have you. But what I've come to realize is that love isn't just about the good times, it's about facing the hard times together. I promise to stand by your side no matter what comes. We'll walk through this life together, and I will cherish every step of it." They exchanged vows, words of hope and commitment, sealing their renewed promises with a kiss. Step 4. A new future. As they moved into the weeks that followed, Mia and Emil knew that their journey wasn't over. There would still be moments of doubt, moments when the past would return to haunt them. But Mia was confident that they had the strength to face whatever came their way. They had rebuilt their foundation, and now it was time to build a future on it. Mia no longer felt like she was living in the shadow of her mistakes. She had faced them, learned from them, and allowed herself the grace to move forward. Emil had done the same, and together they were ready to embrace whatever came next. The road had been long, but it had brought them to a place of understanding and love that neither of them had ever expected. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Mia felt ready to face it with Emil by her side. They had survived the storm, and now they were standing together in the light of a new beginning. Thank you for watching part 10 of Mia's journey. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We hope you enjoyed this story of love, forgiveness, and hope. Stay tuned for more stories of resilience and transformation.